Hello, 6th grade science teachers. Welcome to the final video for the training series. This one is looking at the example lesson plans, specifically the new ones that I've created, which are located down here under the example lesson plans. I've also created an example lesson plan template. So if you are free to use your own lesson plan templates, feel free to make a copy of this and use that for your lesson planning. 6th grade, this is going to be a little bit different for you guys because I created this more for helping teachers use the block schedule, and pretty much all of our 6th grade teacher doesn't use block schedule. We do have Lincoln Middle School starting that next year, and then of course if they do transition 6th grade into middle schools, Blueprint 2030, these are already set for that. But I'm going to show you guys how this easily converts for you guys not being block schedule and how you can still use these lesson plans. So easily convertible. But I want to start off by showing this example lesson plan, and then I'll jump into, the template, and then we'll jump into an actual lesson plan. And based off 6th grade being an elementary and being different and the pacing time and all that sort of stuff, feel free to, if you could see a better way that you could utilize this, maybe connections into the ELA or math, feel free to tweak, make a copy and tweak however you'd like. So up here you kind of have like your just kind of general planning, what chapter or concept are you in, teacher's name, the different, what grade or subject you're doing, the dates. I've been putting like the pacing in. I'll show you that in a second. And then you got your standards that you'll be covering for that week. I typically do 2 standards for a week. That seems about right, but however many you want. And then you have your objectives and do now, so kind of like what students should be learning about, and then how are you opening. For each of these different activities, you have the actual activity where you can describe what's going on. The cognitive lift is that the teacher who's doing all the thinking and the teaching is a bit of a mix. Is some student work, some teacher kind of interaction, or is this something that all students are doing? And I really want teachers to focus on this, because if you end up doing your whole lesson plan and it's all teacher, well, now your students are just kind of taking in and not being a part of the learning. If it's all student, the teacher's not really doing the teaching, and so trying to make sure that the activities are mixed in that. Thinking through what sort of technology or materials are required, the amount of time that each activity will take, and how to transition from one activity to another. So you got that do now, and then I give 1, 2, 3 activities. It just repeats, and it has the same sort of stuff that the do now has. So for 6th grade, if you're not block schedule, this would just turn into a 2-day lesson, where activities, you could turn this into activity 1, activity 2, that's a day. Activity 3, activity 4, that's a day. So you're easily able to convert this into normal not block schedule. But after those activities, then you have your closing and your assessment. How are you going to measure what students have learned for that day? Did they get it correctly? This is a great thing to think about, because you want to look at that data, see how students did, and address that in the next day. You want to assess student learning for what your actual class was. This could just be as simple as one question. It could be a short activity. Depending on how much time is left, will determine what you can do for the closing assessment. And then you have modifications and scaffolding. So if you have any students with IEPs, English language learning, you can put down some additional information for how you need to adapt material for your students. And then after the lessons, reflection and feedback. How do you think certain things went? So that way, if you're reusing this for another time, you have that there. Writing is also a big component of our practice here at KCPS, so I've included 7 ways to support student writing in any content area, and this is pretty small, so I've also linked to the original article. You can go see a larger version of that as well. So that's kind of the blank template. Feel free to use that as you will, and I also have a planning guide over here that I created. You can print that off, laminate it, and it's got moving parts to it. I want to show you real quick, this is a example lesson plan that I've written, and again, I'm writing this as a block schedule, so you will have to adapt it. But if we look at let me jump back to the curriculum map. You can find these up here for the lesson plans, but notice it says this is for weeks 3 through 4. So if I come down to weeks 3 and 4, there's also like a reminder over here, hey, I have a lesson plan that uses these activities here. So it's like a reminder when you get down to it that I have an example lesson plan. So this is one that is filled out. You can see I've got the concept I'm working on, name. I like to link to the scope and sequence so any admin can access the content, and then where I'm at in the pacing. You could either do dates. Since mine's pretty vague, I'm just putting the week in the pacing guide. My standards, and then you can see I start filling in my objectives. I have my do now, asking students questions, and then thinking through my transitions and all that sort of stuff. The way I created these, because I want these to be accessible not only to you, the teacher, but coaches and admin as well. All of these links, majority of them go to like a PDF or an image, so that way admin and coaches can actually see the resource. So I'll go ahead and open one just to show, but this would be referencing what's in the book, as opposed to linking to it online, and then you have to have the right permissions for it to work and all that sort of stuff. So these are just PDFs, so that way people can quickly hop on, see what it is that I'm talking about. And then I also link to different strategies that are used in these, and stuff like that. One thing I want you to focus in on as you look through these is I'm not just saying, hey, just pass out this activity to students and have them work on it. There's actual like incorporating it into a teaching strategy, making it an engaging lesson. A lot of the ideas actually come from Discovery Ed. If you use the teacher book, either the physical one or online, they give you lots of strategies for how to implement these activities that I find very useful. So I've used some of those. Some of them I've come up with my own, but different ways to get the students interacting with the content in more than just a here it is, go work on it type of method. And so you can see that I list them out, and then kind of describe what's going on, and then my closing and any scaffolding that I need. Each of my lesson plans, so I actually have 4 lesson plans for 6th grade, 1 per quarter, and in each one I kind of have a different focus on showing a different way of utilizing our resources. So I kind of explain what it is I do for each one here. So you can check those out. Probably read that before so you can kind of see why I wrote the example lesson plan as I did, to try to highlight different parts of our curriculum map. But you'll notice sometimes I'm using a lot of Discovery Ed, and then sometimes I know like I'm using Nearpod as a way to switch things up. I really like looking at all of our resources in our curriculum map. So I've got Discovery Ed, that's my core. That's what I'm going to do most of my instruction with. It's going to drive my teaching. But then I also have Nearpod that I can bring in. I've got YouTube videos I can bring in, different self-made activities I could utilize, gizmos and FET. So I can bring all those in to kind of differentiate my lesson so it doesn't feel like to students like we're just going through a workbook. So you want to make sure that you utilize those effectively. And so then that kind of just repeats, and I plan out my days. So for block scheduling, this is 3 lessons, but of course this is enough content for 6 days of lessons for a regular 6th grade classroom. So my planning process to create these is, I kind of decide, okay, I'm going to create a lesson plan for week 3, and then I start over here kind of looking at my different activities and kind of figuring out what I have to work with. I believe on this lesson plan I was really focused on, okay, so we have the digestive system, we have the respiratory system, and we have the muscular system. So hey, I just broke that up into 3 separate lessons. So then as you go through these, I maybe don't use every activity, but I use some of them. And then you notice here where not a lot of activities are available, that's where I start using the gizmos or the videos, the Nearpods, things like that. So that's kind of how I break it down. I start opening up these activities, seeing what they have in them. See that these actually have SOS strategies, so I try to incorporate those into the class to make it more engaging. And I've really found it useful to use this as my way to plan. And it does pretty well. Like, I fit all of this in a weekly lesson, very doable. So yeah, I think that's really all I wanted to show. Obviously, this is just me and how I think about lesson planning. Everyone's different, so tailor it to your need. I just hope that you can get ideas or even incorporate a lot of this into your lesson plans, so your students will have engaging and fun lessons. All right, thank you guys, and good luck.